Perfect, Elvis. Thank you. Hi, and good morning, everybody. My name is Catherine Warren, and I am the program manager for Onward to Opportunity here in Southern California. Onward to Opportunity is part of the DNLO Institute for Veterans and Military Families, and we are happy to be able to present this VetNet with you here today. I do want to do a special shout out to the Camp Pendleton Cohort 26. They are actively engaged in our conversation that we're going to be having here today. And so really glad you are here with us and able to benefit from our conversation. What I want to do next is really just turn it over to the lady that we want to hear from today, Ms. Carol Fishman-Cohen. Carol is the CEO and co-founder of the organization called iRelaunch. And our VetNet today is going to be having conversation with folks that are relaunching their careers, how they can relaunch their careers, and what a returnship actually looks like. It's all about figuring out how to make the most of those gaps that you may have in your professional resume. So Carol, without any further ado, I'd love to turn it over to you. Introduce yourself, and so glad to have you here with us today.
Thanks, Catherine, and hi, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with all of you. So as Catherine said, I'm Carol Fishman-Cohen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of iRelaunch. And what we do is we work with employers to create programs to bring people back after taking career breaks. And we call people who are looking to return after taking breaks relaunchers. I'm a relauncher myself. I'm not a military spouse. I'm not a veteran, although we have 3 military spouses on our team. But I did take a career break. I am a financial analyst by trade. My company collapsed when I was on maternity leave with my first child, so I didn't have a company to go back to. And that began my career break. And I had 3 more kids, and I was home with them for 11 years. And then I returned to work 11 years later in a financial analyst role, only because I knew people at the company that I joined because they used to work with me a dozen years before. So at that time, it was in 2001 when I relaunched my career. So 20 years ago plus, there were no programs, no one was talking about any of this. So what we focus on are the population. We look very broadly at population of professionals who take career breaks and want to return. And that can be people who take career breaks for elder care or child care reasons. It can be any gender. It can be people who are a trailing spouse or partner with a spouse or partner who has an overseas assignment. Could be a military spouse. Could be someone who takes a career break following military service. And it could be people who are unretiring after retirement. So we look very broadly at this group, and it's people who take career breaks from 1 to over 20 years. And we have about 100,000 people in the iRelaunch community who meet all of those different descriptions. And we worked with about 250 clients on career reentry programs or programming of some kind. And we work intensely with about almost 100 companies or employers on these formal return to work programs. So that's what we focus on, and we're seeing more and more of these programs be created. And we think that's Catherine and I were talking, it's very relevant for all of you to know what these programs are, how they work, and some of the strategies for applying to them.
Carol, thanks so much. And again, really glad to have you here today. And especially to hear that you too were a relauncher. I will admit I shared your TED Talk with this group as well, because I know personally with my colleague Joanna and I, we always like to see that not just our military connected community is impacted by topics like this, but really the rest of the world. So it's really inspiring to hear your story as well. So ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to start out by asking Carol some questions. But what I want you to do is if you have a question for Carol, feel free to throw it in the chat. We do have folks from the IVMF as well as from iRelaunch that are going to be monitoring your questions in the chat. And so if you have a question for Carol, please feel free to throw it out there. I know we just got the TED Talk out there as as well. And once we get through our list of questions, we will go through and answer some of your questions as well. So without any further ado, Carol, just to kind of kick it off, you've explained a little bit about iRelaunch and what a relauncher is, but can you go into the word returnship? I know that's something I've seen personally on LinkedIn quite a bit lately. Can you explain what it is and how a returnship can really benefit a military spouse or a veteran, or even somebody who's transitioning out of the military right now?
Okay. And actually, before I do that, I just want to call out April Keating from our team, who's military spouse, who is one of the people handling the Q&A, and potentially also Shannon Ansbacher from our team. So getting back to your question. So returnships. Returnships are return to work programs that have an internship component to them. And they were really modeled after the entry-level internships that you often see at universities that students participate in, but tweaked for the mid-career professional. And over time, the use of an internship-like experience in an employer career reentry program has become more popular. So the programs that are designed this way, and it usually you come into the organization usually in a role for a particular period of time, and then after a certain number of weeks or months, there's a decision made about whether you're going to continue and get hired as a full-time employee. So that's how it works. There are other models where now we're seeing some employers use what we call a direct hire model, where people are hired as employees from day one, and there is not an internship. And the other piece that's important to know is that the way that these returnships have evolved is they used to be more focused on project-based and more like a contract or temporary role that you come into, but they've really changed, and now they're much more role-based, where you are filling an actual open headcount role in your returnship, and the whole stance of the program and the way you're recruited and integrated into the work teams is with the assumption that you're going to convert to an employee as opposed to the possibility. So we call that an intent to hire philosophy of the program. So we're seeing more and more programs evolve that way. And I think the other thing that's important to say is that the return to work programs have been around now for almost 20 years, but the very first returnship version was in 2008. So again, we have a long enough history now with these programs, but they used to be all about risk. That the reason that there was this temporary engagement with you before the permanent hiring decision was made was the perception was it was risky to hire people who are coming off of career break. Now, over time, this model has proved to be very successful, and from the companies that we manage, from the employers that we manage most closely on the conversion rate, or the percentage of people who are hired after completing this kind of a program, averages around 84%. And some of the more recent newer programs that we're working with have conversion rates of even higher than that, some much higher. So it's a very successful model. And the more success stories that are out there, then the less risk is associated to the hiring of people who take career breaks. So that's better for all of us. And that's why we've sometimes seen some programs change from a returnship to direct hire, or come right out of the gate with the direct hire because they have enough data now and enough evidence around them, or maybe they tried returnship for a while themselves and had a high conversion rate, and they're thinking, you know, this is not as risky as we originally thought. We're going to hire people as employees right from the beginning. So we're really in the middle of this. This is happening all in real time, but it's all going in a very good direction.
No, thank you so much. And again, it's really inspiring to hear that folks are really taking a chance on folks that have been out of the workforce, employers, I should say. So our group here has that military connection. And so if someone in our military connected community, whether you be a transitioning service member, veteran, or military spouse, has left that community or left the workforce, they've had this career break, at some point. What are some suggestions for this group that you have about how to get back into the workforce? We do have, we have a handful just within this group right here that, have taken career breaks, for a variety of different reasons, and now are really eager to get back into the workforce.
Mhm. Well, so I would say first and foremost is to make sure you know what you want to do now. And maybe it's directly related to what you were doing in the military. Maybe it was something, if you're a military spouse, that you were doing before you became a military spouse and had career continuity issues from a lot of moving around. So you have to figure out what you want to do all over again. And then the other piece is to become a subject matter expert all over again, or for the first time. And I'm aware that there are many people in this audience who are actively engaged in a certification or credentialing program. And I think that's very powerful for a number of reasons. Of course, obviously, it's powerful because you're learning something hands-on and relevant to the work that you hope to be doing. But also, by having that knowledge and becoming a subject matter expert, that is a way for us to build confidence. The more we know about our field, the more we're comfortable with the acronyms and the language. And maybe there's even a field study or some sort of a capstone project or an opportunity to think about how to apply what you're learning to an actual problem that exists in a particular organization. That is all part of confidence building and having a lot to talk about in terms of what you're learning and why you're so enthusiastic about it. And then the third piece is just by taking the course or getting the credential, you now have recent and relevant coursework on your resume, and you are signaling powerfully to organizations that you're very serious about returning to work, and specifically in this particular area. So that is all really important parts of the steps. The steps you need to take to relaunch. And then the next piece after that is what is generally referred to as networking. But let's break that down a little bit. What we see a lot are relaunchers who spend months and sometimes years researching companies online and applying for jobs online. And they'll say, I've applied to 100 or 200 places and not a single, not even a rejection, just nothing. Like no response at all, or a lot of rejection. And so I know you've heard this before, but what we recommend is, especially if you're a relauncher, you have a career break, the personal handoff is really important. Now, what we emphasize, and we actually have a podcast called 321 I Relaunch. We have about 230 episodes released at this point, and many of our conversations, I hosted, so I know these conversations are with relaunchers who are in all different situations, including veterans, including military spouses, but also people, who took like a 20-year career break who are going back into a highly technical role. So, we look at many different scenarios, and you will hear them talk about that critical moment where their friend met someone at church who then introduced that person to them, and that person became their most important mentor in the process. Or the parent who was at a sports game for one of their kids, who was sitting next to another parent and asked them where they were working, and ended up getting referred to their human resources department by that other parent who didn't really know them that well, but is giving them enough of a, they're probably saying, I can't vouch for this person, I've never worked with them, but I know this person, and it would be great to take a look at their application. And right there, you get bumped up, to the top of the pile. So I'm not talking about these formal networking events where you have to be nervous about how you're going to have these conversations with all these people. Although I will say that your subject matter expertise is going to arm you with more to talk about that's relevant to people who are in your field that might be at a professional, some sort of professional association event. So that piece does come into play. Also, if you're returning to something that you did before, you have people who you worked with before. And, I remember getting back in touch with people I'd worked with a dozen years before, And in part, I was able to do it because one of the people used to have an annual Christmas party, and I would go and I would see everyone every year. And they'd say, "What are you doing?" I'd say, "I'm home with the kids." And then finally, I think in year 10, I said, "I'm thinking about getting back to work." And this was 1999. I had no idea how this was going to happen. It was actually 1999 to 2000. That was year 10. I had no idea how this was going to happen. There was no programs or guidance or anything. But the response was, "Oh, that's great. Let's talk. Let's have coffee." And I really took advantage of that. And I wanted to review with them, what are all the issues facing the industry right now? What are the new products and services? Why don't we use the old ones anymore? What are this new language? How does that product work? I've never heard of that before. And like really get into that detail. So if you have that opportunity to talk with people with whom you worked in the past, that can be very helpful. Also another confidence builder to hear their enthusiasm about your interest in returning to work, even if your confidence in yourself is very low, that's helpful. And then people with whom you served or people with whom you went to school, all of those people have moved to different places, and they can be potentially contacts and also just people to reestablish relationships with. And sorry, I'm going on, Catherine, but I'm just going to mention one more thing. When you reestablish relationships with people from the past, you're not going in there opportunistically and say, "Can you help me get a job?" right off the bat. One of the best low-key ways to get back in touch with people, and Catherine and I, we can talk about LinkedIn in a minute, because that gives us a great way to reconnect with people in a low-key way. But the best thing to do is say, "I'm looking to get back into the workforce after a long time, and I'm in information gathering mode. I'm really working on becoming a subject matter expert all over again, or I'm developing my subject matter expertise, and I'm really interested in who you might recommend who are the best experts, who do you follow, who are the best experts, what podcasts do you listen to, are there certain presentations that are really powerful or a course I should be taking?" And that's an easy kind of question for them to answer. And that's like reestablishing the relationship. And then later you can come back to them if it's appropriate and talk to them about more specifically job opportunities.
No, some really great points, and something I actually jotted down, and it's pertaining to the military connected community, but those transitioning service members that are coming off active duty for the first time, what are some of the challenges that you see? Because we know that relaunch can be a bunch of different things. And statistically, transitioning service members don't necessarily continue to do the same job that they did on active duty. So what are some challenges and some successes you've seen with this community?
Mm-hmm. So, and I should call out April Keating right there, who does handle all of our military outreach. And I know that she was responsible with you, Catherine, for making this event happen today. But so her spouse just ended active duty, and now they've moved on to that next phase. So April, I don't know if you want to make any comments about that in the chat. And apologies for the dog there, but I will say one thing right there is a teaching moment with the dog barking. Know that in this pandemic world that everyone is working out of a home office of one kind or another, even though it looks like maybe that's going to stop at some point. Not everyone's set up perfectly for to be working at home. And sometimes you might hear a dog bark, or someone might burst in the door, or someone might run in the door and start talking. And the employers are very forgiving about this, even in an interview situation. It's really how you handle it. That's what's important. So you might even want to practice being in an interview situation where someone runs in or the dog barks, and you just keep talking, or you just say, "Apologies for the dog barking," and you keep going. That's what's going to make an impression, is how you handle it as opposed to it happening. So just wanted to put that out there. Now, in terms of people who are in the military service who are doing focus on a particular kind of role, and then when they're coming out and transitioning to the civilian world, looking for something different, or not knowing exactly what it translates into. So the way we've seen people be successful, and we have a podcast on this with Chris De Jesus, and I don't know if April, if you can put that in here, because this is what he did. So you want to, and this actually pertains to people who are not in the military too, who are transferring to a new field. So think about the strongest transferable skills that you have, combined with the kind of credentialing or skills updating that you're targeting now. So if you have skills in project management or managing change, or it could be a language, it could be maybe something that is sales related, even though it's not called sales, where you've had to interact with people and convince them or bring them on board to come along with a particular strategy or initiative or concept. So a lot of this has to do with thinking very creatively about the skills that you've used in your prior role and rethink where those could be applicable in a new role. And Catherine, maybe you can just add, because a coach can often be helpful in this situation, or group coaching. And I didn't know if there's anything that you want to share in terms of resources along those lines, and then I can go on with more detail.
No, absolutely. And so just internally, I called out our Camp Pendleton Onward to Opportunity cohort. You know, you always have your installation team, you know, locally for you here. But other organizations do offer coaching. And one of the Institute's partners right now is Hire Heroes USA, where not only are they going to be able to help you with some of that resume assistance, collecting your thoughts for that first time, but they also do offer coaching along the way. In fact, we had one participant in this group right now where they contacted their HHUSA transition specialist right when they found out that they were going to have an interview. And so they were able to go over some mock interviews, you know, get some coaching before they went in. This is this person's first time interviewing, and actually gaining some valuable information prior to launching into that first interview. So there are other organizations out there as well, Carol.
That's very helpful. Thank you. But just in general, this whole process, and we talk about this at iRelaunch. We have something called the iRelaunch Return to Work Roadmap, and it's really a process of breaking down each of your prior significant work and volunteer experiences into components. And we count, for military spouses who have done substantive volunteer work, we count volunteer experience too. So breaking those experiences down into components, extracting the ones that you love the most and are best at, and then rebuilding a career for a next step career path choice for yourself based on those extracted components. And so you can use that under any circumstances. Now, let me just give you some examples of where we've seen transferable skills. So for example, financial advisors, the financial advisory world is very interested in people who have been in education roles in the past, and that can include a lot of different types of roles, civilian and military, because essentially what you're doing when you are working as a financial advisor is educating. You're educating people about financial strategies, about translating a lot of information for them. The other thing, another good example is, for example, one of our programs that we work with is Oracle, and that is a program, Oracle Career Relaunch, that is a direct hire program. So they hire you as an employee from day one. You're still with a group of people, and you're still getting some transitional programming and mentoring and other parts that make it a formal career reentry program. But they have, for example, hotel software, and they are hiring people who worked at hotels who use the software, who were consumers of that software, now to be on the other side to teach those who are in hotels how to use it. So anytime you're in, so that's another kind of a teaching role. So that is transferable. And also we've seen people, for example, start in financial sales and then have a long career break and then move into technical sales. So, but with the project management credentials and some of the other certificates that I've seen that are part of the repertoire, I know that you focus on. There's some, I think I saw some cybersecurity and certain kinds of IT, very specific applications. There's a lot of demand right now for those kinds of roles. And sometimes the job description will even say that they want you to have some sort of certification or credentialing. And that in itself can be the ticket to making the transfer. So.
I had one of those teachable moments as well, and I muted myself and forgot to unmute myself. You brought up a great point, Carol, about information technology and everything that falls underneath that IT umbrella. Just with our Onward to Opportunity group here at Camp Pendleton this go around, we have about 35% of the cohort who are pursuing IT related certifications. All the way, to the right for those who are seasoned, but we have a large group that are really interested in doing a relaunch into a new career, and that being information technology. Do you have any words of wisdom or anything that you can share with them about breaking into that IT field? And when you spoke earlier about information gathering, giving them any tips, to break into that new industry?
Mm-hmm. Well, I should tell you that the employers that run, most of the employers that run these formal career reentry programs are very interested in veterans and military spouses in being in these programs. Now, the handful that don't are usually not because they have a parallel separate program that brings back veterans, for example. But you're highly desired as a talent pool coming out of the military or being a military spouse, depending on the role. And that plus the IT degree is going to make you stand out as a candidate for a whole range of these programs. So if you go to the irelaunch.com website, we have a whole list of these programs, and you can click through and you can see the different types of programs, and some of them are hiring all around the year. Some of them have defined cohorts where there's a certain deadline and you apply, and then a group of people form a cohort and they move through the program together, and then they may run one in the spring and one in the fall. But the combination that you have with military service, then you've taken a break, you're doing this upskilling or reskilling and getting these credentials. I think there's a lot of demand in a range of finance companies that are these programs are very popular in finance. They're very popular in tech, but when you say tech, it's misleading, because we don't just mean the Silicon Valley companies, which are certainly very much engaged in this kind of programming. The legacy tech companies also very engaged, but other companies that use technology at their core. So for example, General Motors has a program called Take Two. Ford has a program. We have a task force where there's another big automobile company that's about to be announced that's part of that's about to start building a new program. The defense industry. Last week, I was just doing an information session with Lockheed Martin on their Chapter Next program. And that program even has some part-time and flexible roles, and they're moving to what they call rolling admissions. So that means that they will take people all around the calendar year and not just at certain times of the year. So I would recommend that program. Northrop Grumman has a very active program. Raytheon Technologies, Boeing. So there's a lot of activity in aerospace and defense. And then, for example, industrial equipment. So Caterpillar, Cummins, some of these companies. So you wouldn't necessarily call them a tech company, but they have technology at their core. So I just want to emphasize that when you look at the irelaunch.com and you see all the list of all the programs, you're going to see they really span a wide range. And don't be put off by, if they're a finance company and you think, oh, they just want finance people. when you look a layer deeper, you'll see functionally, they're really recruiting across the organization. Wells Fargo right now is recruiting across 15 lines of business for a cohort that will start in the spring and one that will start in the fall. And you're talking about marketing and communications and human resources and legal and operations and supply chain, in addition to what you might consider sort of core investment banking or commercial banking or other finance related activities.
Thanks so much for shedding that light on it. I know it's a very interesting conversation we have all the time. And just knowing that in the future, some of these jobs haven't even been created. So if you want some job continuity in the future, that's definitely a field to look into. And I appreciate you going a layer deeper and saying to dig into the organization, because you're absolutely right. There's so much more to the company than just what you might see, visually that way around.
Yes.
So just to pivot a little bit, we're talking about, certifications, career breaks, returnships. One of the things that tend to plague our military spouse community, as well as some of our veteran community who do take career breaks, are those gaps that they have in their resumes. I know right now that there's a movement out on LinkedIn to call out your career break. So my first question is, what are some of the tips and tricks you have for folks that do have gaps in their resumes? And then my second question is, can you speak a little bit more in depth about calling out your career break and what that movement on LinkedIn looks like?
Okay. So let's see. Let's just start with LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, we call LinkedIn a gift to relaunchers, because first of all, it lets us locate all those long lost people from the past when we might not know where they are. If we can find them on LinkedIn, even if we used to work with them a long time ago, if they have a LinkedIn profile, we can probably locate them. We can send them a connection request, try to send a little note with it. Hey Jim, I don't know if you remember me, but we worked together 10 years ago and I wanted to reconnect right now. Jim's probably going to remember you and accept. There's so many relaunchers will say, well, what if they don't remember me? Or what if they're mad because I haven't been in touch for the last 10 years? And we just say, just reach out to the person. The worst thing that can happen is you don't hear from them. But more often than not, they come back and they say, they remembered me and it was a really fun connection. But the great thing about LinkedIn is it's very low key. You can just reconnect and then you can go into the email about being in information gathering mode because you're working on becoming a subject matter expert again. And if it turns out that you just saw someone at a reunion or some sort of an event or a party, you can reach out to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, really fun seeing you last weekend. Just thought I would connect here. Because you never know later when it might be more important to talk about that to that person. And it could even be something like, and I'll use Amazon as an example, because the Amazon Returnship is very, very interested in veterans, in people who are coming off of military service and also military spouses. And so you might say, oh, that person works at Amazon. And it could even be, I'm applying for the Amazon Returnship Program, and I just want to connect with you and just hear some thoughts about what it's like to have worked there and what are your experiences. So it's going to be that kind of phone call too. Sometimes people will rely on their friends who actually do hiring, who are working in a particular employer, to do a mock interview with them. And someone just told me that they did that, and they said, I thought my friend was going to be really easy on me, but my friend was not, and gave me this really tough interview and was very unforgiving, but it was really good experience. So anyway, LinkedIn is first great for identifying all those long lost people from the past, giving you this opportunity to reconnect with them in the low key information gathering mode way. And now this what Catherine's talking about just happened about 2 weeks ago. So LinkedIn just announced a career breaks category for profile building. So we think this is a huge milestone, because what they're saying is, put your career break in your career path. It's a legitimate part of your career path. And so, like right now, if you are in between your military service and you're taking coursework right now and you're updating skills, you can say, you can put career break for education or career, there are different categories, about 13 different categories that you can fill in about your career break. And then you can have a chance, just like if it's a job, describe some of the highlights of what you are doing, or if you're a military spouse, you've been on career break for 12 years, you can highlight some of the volunteer work you've done. And also you could say career break to care for my elderly mother-in-law, or, it could also be a little bit personal. Sometimes if it's a health issue, people don't want to go into a lot of detail. It's too personal. But there's even that category too. So the idea though, and the reason it's so important is that essentially LinkedIn and the people who are at LinkedIn are quoted saying, it's a professional, it's part of your career path that you took a career break. That's part of what informs who you are. It's a legitimate experience. It's validating having the career break on as part of your career path. And because it's LinkedIn doing it, because LinkedIn is who they are, it's very meaningful. And so they're setting the stage for this. Now, the Call Out Your Break campaign is a campaign that we at iRelaunch have launched in conjunction with this announcement by LinkedIn, because we were so excited to see it that we thought we have to amplify this message, because we know that the employers that run the career reentry programs sometimes miss some of us who are eligible for their programs because maybe some of our volunteer work or something else that we put on our profile, it isn't calling out to them enough that we're on career break. So the employers that run these programs want you to call out the career break, because you have to have one in order to be eligible to apply for and participate in their programs. So we still say this, that when you're applying to these programs on your resume, you actually want to call out, and this was even before LinkedIn set up this feature, you want to put on your resume, career break, underline, 2018 to the present, and then bullet point, career break for elder care reasons or for childcare reasons, or career break following military service. And then you can say recent and relevant coursework, put that underneath there. Any strategic volunteering you're doing, put that underneath there. And then I'm going to add, people can regularly ask us, well, what if I have a side job at Instacart just to bring in some income, but it's not really related to my career goals? Or what if I'm a substitute teacher, or I have this consulting business, but it's, just occasional? Have I disqualified myself from these programs? And the answer is no. And the employers interpret the career break very liberally. So I actually did an interview with one of the leaders of the General Motors Take Two program, and I asked her this question outright, because some of our relaunchers were saying you have to answer like a pre-qualifying question that says, are you on career break? And if you're like, well, if I say yes, but then they see that I've been working, do they think, is that an integrity issue? And she said, absolutely not. Interpret that very loosely. You should pretty much always say, for these examples that we're talking about, that yes, you're on career break, and it's perfectly fine to have some of these other income producing activities that are sporadic, or they're not exactly related to your career path. So I wanted to tell you, if in doubt, apply for the program. Let the employer decide if you're ineligible or not. If you're not eligible, they can come back to you with that. More often than not, you will be eligible. And in fact, there are some programs like Amazon's and Ford's where they actually define your eligibility, not only if you are on a career break, but if you consider yourself underemployed, which some of us might be, because we're in a job because we're just trying to make some income, while we're really gunning for like our real relaunch that's going to happen next time after that. So getting back though to this Call Out Your Break campaign. So you will see different companies. Northrop Grumman's done this, Amazon's done this, Wells Fargo. I think there's another company coming out tomorrow, and they are actually using hashtag Call Out Your Break, not call out your career break, but call out your break, hashtag call out your break. and saying, we want to see your career break, and then giving information about their return to work programs. And then on the other side, we're encouraging the relaunchers. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll see Carol Fishman Cohen. Just look me up, Carol Fishman Cohen. You'll see I have put the career break feature into my profile if you want to see an example of that. And we want to see as many relaunchers say, hey, I called out my career break. And the more of us that do this, and the more employers that acknowledge this, and not only acknowledge, encourage this, then the less stigma over time there's going to be with taking career breaks for any reason. And that's also been helped along by the pandemic and having so many people take career breaks during that time.
No, Carol, thank you so much, for that. And I think it's exciting, especially, COVID had some really disastrous impacts on a lot of different families and a lot of different people out there for a lot of reasons. However, I believe this is part of the silver lining when it comes to our workforce to see some of these positive changes that are happening. I do have another question though for you in regard to returnships, and then I really want to dive into what iRelaunch, could do for our guests here on our program today. But a question that has come up already just with our group are remote positions. And so a lot of these companies, are having you call out your break, come back to work. What are remote opportunities like, especially for that military spouse who still has an active duty service member?
Yes, and it's really a byproduct of what you're talking about, Catherine, that we've gone through the pandemic and everything suddenly had to go to virtual or work from home, and that accelerated the whole concept of mainstream acceptance of remote roles that really wasn't there before. And one of the big deterrents of from a military spouse standpoint and relaunchers in general of going back to work is that face time in the office. So it's like, yeah, I could work the equivalent of a full-time job, but only if I have some flexibility on how and where that and when that work gets done. Now that's more of a reality. So actually all of the career reentry programs that happened during the pandemic, where all jobs, career break or no career break, were remote, except those that had to be in a facility, manufacturing or healthcare, certain roles where you have to be there in person. But there were many, many more remote roles and many remote returnships. And it also opened up the eyes of the employer that if they can make as many remote roles as possible, they can recruit nationally. So that's the other thing that happened is we run the iRelaunch Return to Work conference. We actually have one coming up in May, and we can talk about that. But that's an opportunity for relaunchers to come face to face with employers that run these programs and are specifically looking to hire people who take career breaks. So anyway, but what our event used to be in person. So it used to be usually in a metro area, Metro New York or Metro Chicago, wherever we would run it, that's who would be recruiting there and that's who would be attending. But now that it's a virtual event, we have employers who are recruiting either for permanently remote roles or anywhere in the country, or maybe they're that kind of hybrid thing where they say they want you to be in commutable distance to a particular location, even though you're only going to be in the office periodically, or each company's kind of defining that for themselves now. And it's, again, in real time, they're all finding their way. But remote means that they can recruit nationally, and remote for our conferences means any relauncher anywhere in the country can participate. So remote's been a really big deal. And the other thing I will say is that for those people who took career breaks that are childcare related, we have found that the remote relaunch is a gentler relaunch for families if you have younger kids. Because if you think about it, mom or dad who's been on career break, now they're back at work, but they're around. They're like, maybe you're not supposed to come in to, don't make any noise over here, or don't come in, but they're there in the house, as opposed to before, when you relaunch your career, you walked out of the house and you had a whole new routine for the family because you were out of the house the entire day at a workplace.
No, thank you so much for that. And I like what you said about a soft reentry to the workforce. I know of several families where the families did go back to work and it's been a struggle, with the kids just because they've been so used to having mom and dad around, and now it's this complete shift.
Yep.
Lots of great information. What I really want to just have you dive in a little bit before we go to some questions from our audience. What can I relaunch? How can people learn more about I relaunch? Where can they go? What are some of the different tools? I know April's been throwing them out there, in the chat, but just a little bit more about
Yep.
I relaunch.
Thank you, Catherine. So I would recommend that all of you get onto the irelaunch.com mailing list. Go to irelaunch.com. It's right at the scroll down at the bottom of the homepage. You can get on the mailing list. And the reason why is that every Friday we send out the return to work report. And actually, April is the person who is in charge of that. So that report, the return to work report, features return to work programs and job opportunities that are specifically where the employer wants to hire people who have career breaks. So they want to hire our population. That's why they have their program. That's why their information is on our return to work report. We'll also have the podcast of the week and certain articles and other tools and resources. But we know that those jobs and programs are really what people are most focused on. Then we highly encourage you to register on our job board and upload your resume there. I think you can put your LinkedIn profile link in too. Again, because the employers that are on our job board are specific, they want people to have a career break. That's why they come to us. And that's why they look at who is on our job board, because they are recruiting for their programs that require a career break, or they're opening up jobs without having a return to work program that they're interested in hiring relaunchers for. Because over time, we relaunchers have a great reputation. We have great work experience, we're educated, we have a mature perspective. We've worked before, we face work deadlines, we've worked with different personalities, multi-generational teams. And also we've upskilled and reskilled typically. We have many more resources available to us to do that. And we have an excitement and enthusiasm about being back at work because we've been away from it. And the other thing is that we know at this stage of our lives, we know ourselves much better than we might have very early on. So when you're early stage in your career, and I would recommend this to anyone early stage, you should be in exploratory mode. But now when we're later stage, we're more self-aware. We have a better idea about where we can add value to an organization. And so that again is a unique characteristic of relaunchers. So that's something else. So upload your information to our job board. And then we have if anyone's on Facebook, we have a private Facebook group. About 9,000 of our relaunchers are in that group. Very vibrant, very active. People are always putting in questions and issues and advising each other, and our coaches are on that too. So that's another resource for you. And peruse our irelaunch.com site. We put a lot of tools and resources out there. We have a weekly blog, we have a weekly podcast, we have a roadmap. Oh, and I guess I will say that at the end of this month, we are going to open up registration for our iRelaunch Return to Work conference. And that conference will happen in May, and it's going to be, the registration is free for a certain period of time. When you register in the free period, which should start at the end of March, you also get for free our iRelaunch roadmap, which is our in-depth 30-step, 5-stage return to work guide, where we really take you step by step on a lot of what I've been talking about, but in much more detail and many more resources, and it's all pulled together and it's all curated, and you can get that free when you register free for a conference. So it's a very excellent opportunity coming up in the first few weeks after March. And then after that, we start charging a little bit for the conference, and we charge a little more. And normally the roadmap, we charge like $75 for. So it's a very good opportunity. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, thanks so much. And, just a lot of great information that's out there, ladies and gentlemen. And I've always admired the synergy that comes with Carol's organization, the people that work with her. And the one thing I would, throw out to the military connected folks that are here today, really just getting involved with organizations outside of your military connected community. You may meet, for some of our military spouses that are here, you may meet other people who have taken career breaks because of childcare. And not only, so you might have that military connection and they don't, but you're creating a new network for yourself. You're meeting people who are just like you, just in a very different capacity. So I really would encourage taking advantage of the conference that's coming up, as well as the roadmap. Carol, we did have a couple of questions that came in through the chat.
Sure.
And I actually have two from Radha. And I do want to say, I met Radha, was connected with Radha from another Onward to Opportunity employee. We sat down this summer and chatted about, her next steps. She's relocating from Okinawa, Japan, here at Camp Pendleton right now. So just this really great transition that she's been through. Husband's getting ready to retire, here shortly. So Radha, here's your question. The first part of it was, how long would you consider a career break? And then secondly, Carol's recommendation to include the headline career break on a resumes blows my mind. Completely contradicts what I've been taught in college, but so thankful it's being normalized. And then she had asked April, were there any examples that they might be able to check out or look at?
Okay, so these are great questions. And I'm really glad that, Radha, you asked a question about how long, because there was one thing I neglected to mention, and that is that there's a minimum number of years of career break that the most employer programs require in order for eligibility. It used to be 2 years, but because of the pandemic, a number of them have reduced that minimum to 1 year. So it's either 1 or 2 years of career break or more. But, for example, when I mentioned that information session last week at Lockheed Martin, there were 4 relaunchers who were on a panel there. 3 of them had returned after career breaks of 20 years. So we actually have on our podcast, we have a special series of longest career breaks. And so we're truly talking about career breaks from 1 to over 20 years. And the career break length, which is typically 2 years, was really established because employers were finding that that was traditionally the time away when it started to be more of an issue about someone getting a job. It's like, oh, they've been out for 2 years. Now that we've had the pandemic happen, that's changed somewhat. And that's why, you've also seen some of these career break minimums get reduced. But again, if you're not, the definition of career break is very loose. So again, if you're not sure, apply for the program, put whatever you think is appropriate in that career break section. So you could put your coursework and volunteer work and that side job that you had or the occasional consulting, put it under the career breaks category, and certainly do that on your resume. Now, putting it on the LinkedIn profile, I understand why it sounds counterintuitive, because it used to be like, cover up that career break. Like, what can you do to cover it up? And we used to say, look, if you've done volunteer work for a certain amount of time, put that on for part of your career break. If you took a course, that was part of it. And so that is really what it used to be like. But now that we have the career break category, and we have more and more employees that have these programs and actually want to see the career break, we think things are shifting. Now, is it possible that you put that career break on there and there'll be other employers that think, oh, career break, I'm not even gonna look at this person. But the thing about it is, the programs that are looking for people who have career breaks can actively do a keyword search now to search for those who use the career break feature on their LinkedIn profile. But those who actually call out their career break and then they're seen by other employers that are not that interested, it's pretty unusual that you would be picked out of LinkedIn and actively recruited, for even a regular job. Usually you are going to be recruited because you have a personal handoff of some kind, not because you showed up on a a random keyword search from LinkedIn for a reason that is separate from calling out the career break. So I think this is really changing, and some people are nervous about it. Some people are ready to call it out. If you want to, you can look at the hashtag call out your break. We have some relaunchers who are using it, who have just put the career break feature on their LinkedIn profile. So go on to LinkedIn and search hashtag call out your break. Some of those will pop up. If you go onto our Facebook group and ask people to put in links to their LinkedIn profile who are doing this, you'll get some examples that way. We also have an iRelaunch LinkedIn group that you have to search out and apply for. You can find it, but you have to apply for it and we'll let you in. We just want to make sure it's all relaunchers, and we have that for the Facebook group too. You have to answer some questions. That would be another place where you can see other relaunchers, how they are showing their career breaks on their LinkedIn profiles, whether or not they're actually using the career break feature. Catherine, you're on mute.
We have time for one more question. And that is, going out on your website, seeing the organizations and the employers that do offer returnships. If someone is interested in a company that isn't there yet, does that mean don't even apply, or is that still an option?
This is a great question. So this is what we say. Absolutely apply for roles that you're interested in. That there are plenty, as hard as we're working to get these programs set up inside employers, the reality is that most employers don't have them. Actually, about almost 40% of the Fortune 50 have one of these programs. Less than 10% of the Fortune 500 have one of these programs. Most of our relaunchers are, because we deal with such a huge pool, are relaunching careers at employers that don't have these programs. A lot of smaller or medium-sized employers don't have these programs. I will call out the state of Utah. We just work closely with them. The state of Utah just started the very first state returnship program. You need to be a resident of the state of Utah to apply. They have applications open right now. That program is growing. It's really exciting. So that might be one to take a look at if that pertains to you. I'm just remembering what I was just going to say about this. Anyway, so but most of these if it's a smaller, medium-sized employer, they don't have a program. You can actually suggest an internship-like experience to them. I actually say this in my TED Talk. But what might happen is they might say, you seem good to me, but there's no way I'm going to be able to convince my colleagues once they see this 8-year career break. And you can say, I understand that it might be hard to convince your colleagues about my candidacy. What if you took me on for a special project or some kind of a contract role, something that was short term, so you could see a sample of my work before having to make the hiring decision? So right there, you are suggesting something that mimics a returnship without all the additional mentoring and training and programming, but still the fundamental job opportunity. And it does give them the opportunity to check out the working relationship, and it gives you the opportunity to check out the working relationship too. So absolutely suggest that. Some employers will have never thought of that before. Others might reject it out of hand, but you can never lose by suggesting something like that. So that is something we would recommend.
Carol, I cannot thank you enough for joining us here today. You, April, the iRelaunch team, so much valuable information to share just across the board about relaunchers, but specifically diving into our military connected community. Folks that are pursuing certifications, you're hearing it from an industry expert. Those certifications are going to be your bridge to employers. That's the bridge. You want to continue building that bridge that's there. We at the DNLO Institute for Veterans and Military Families and Onward to Opportunity can't thank you enough for being with us here today. And again, folks, reach out. We have the chat that's there. I know Joanna's probably saved the chat. So if you want to go ahead and do that, so you have some of these links that April has been sharing, that's just a great way to keep them.
Catherine, thank you so much for the opportunity and to present to all of you. We feel very privileged to be able to have done it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us here today. It was great having you all.